And that's what synchronicity means. It's a coincidence, and if you're talking with somebody about somebody that you haven't thought about in 20 years and that person calls on the phone, that's synchronicity. And he believed it was a way that God intervened in our lives that broke all the rules of nature that he had set up to reach in and sort of tap us on the shoulder and say, I'm here. He says in the book, even though I can't prove using empirical and scientific tools the existence of a God, I can show through anecdotal evidence, having seen thousands of patients come through this institution, that people who believe in God get better faster and that the recovery is more enduring than people who don't. And for me, hearing that was more impactful than if he had claimed that he had proved the existence of a God, because I wouldn't have believed that. But I was already at a mindset where I would have done anything I could to improve my chances of never having to take drugs again by even 1%. And if believing in God was going to help me, whether there's a God up there or not, believing in one itself had the power to help me, I was going to do that. So then the question is, how do you start believing in something that you can't see or smell or hear or touch or taste or acquire with your senses? And Jung provides the formula for that. And he says, act as if, you fake it till you make it. And so that's, what I started doing. I just started pretending there was a God watching me all the time, and kind of life was a series of tests. And there was a bunch of moral decisions that I had to make every day. And each one, these were all just little things that I did. But each one now for me had a moral dimension. Like when when the alarm goes off, do I lay in bed for an extra 10 minutes with my indolent thoughts, or do I jump right out of bed? Do I make my bed? Most important decision of the day. Do I hang up the towels? Do I when I go into the closet and pull out my blue jeans and a bunch of those wire hangers fall on the ground, do I shut the door and say, I'm too important to do that, that's somebody else's job, or not? And if I make a whole bunch of those choices right, that I maintain myself in a posture of surrender, which keeps me open to the power to my higher power, to my God. And when I do those things right, so much about addiction is about abuse of power, abuse of, all of us have some power, whether it's good looks, or whether it's connections or education or family or whatever. And there's always a temptation to use those to fulfill self-will. And the challenge is, how do you use those always to serve instead God's will and the good of our community? And that, to me, is kind of the struggle. And when I do that, I feel God's power coming through me, and that I can do things. I'm much more effective as a human being. That gnawing, anxiety that I lived with for so many years, and my God, it's gone, and that I can kind of like put down the oars and hoist the sail, and and the wind takes me, and I can see the evidence of it in my life. And the big temptation for me is that when all these good things start happening in my life and the cash and prizes start flowing in, how do I maintain that posture of surrender? How do I stay surrendered then, when my inclination is to say to God, thanks, God, I got it from here.
Yeah.
And drive the car off the cliff again. And so, I had a spiritual awakening, and my desire for drugs and alcohol was lifted miraculously. And to me, it was as much a miracle as if I'd been able to walk on water. Because I had tried everything earnestly, sincerely, and honestly for a decade to try to stop, and I could not do it under my own power. And then all of a sudden, it was lifted effortlessly. And, so I saw that evidence, early evidence of God in my life, and of the power. And I see it now, every day of my life.